Welcome back to Oak Haven. It's been about a year since we did a video on Japanese stiltgrass, which is a non-native invasive species that is causing us a lot of grief. We've had a lot of questions about how did our treatments go, what are we doing, are we changing anything, so we wanted to update it a little bit. There's still a lot of good information in that first video that we probably won't go over again, but we'll try to summarize a little bit of it now. And then we'll show you some areas that we've treated and give you an idea of when we treated them and what it looks like after being treated. So, Japanese stiltgrass. Japanese stiltgrass is obviously an Asian invasive species. I've got a handful of it here because we've been collecting it as we've been walking out here. It's a grass. It's an annual grass. The leaves are pointed at both ends. Whoops. And then it has this shiny spot or shiny stripe down the middle of it. So it's pretty distinctive. Here, let me show you on this one here. I don't know if you can pick up on the shininess. But it's a fairly short leaf. It doesn't look like a lot of other grasses. But it is an annual. It comes up in the spring and then flowers in the fall, and it overwinters as seeds. If you look through here, there's a big patch of it here that's probably 20 feet by 15 feet or so. But I think this emphasizes a characteristic of Japanese stiltgrass that's worth recognizing, which is that it seems like it stays in one place until something physically picks it up and moves it someplace else. It doesn't spread seed to the wind. It doesn't have seeds that stick on animal fur very easily. It seems like most of the seed is produced and dropped down. So you can find an area like this, and there's a lot of it, but I look over here, 10 feet over, and there's none. Bunch of it, 10 feet over this way, there's none. So when I posted this video last time, people were asking me about the range, where you would find this, because you don't find it all over the country. It's really emphasized in the eastern part of the United States, mostly in the southeastern part of the United States. It doesn't go up to the Canadian border. I'll put a range map in here, and you can see this range map. This is a range map that I got from iNaturalist. I thought that would be probably the most up-to-date range map, and it shows you the distribution of where people have reported observations of stiltgrass in the iNaturalist community. Now, I will say that there are some observations that are up in Minnesota that when I click on those observations, I realize that they've been misidentified. So this isn't 100% science, but this is what people have recognized. So you get a general idea of what the range is. So I tend to post these videos just assuming that people have the same distaste that I do for invasive species, and I find out that that's not always the case. So why do I care if a plant like Japanese stiltgrass is non-native and invasive? The reason is because it will carpet an area and it will smother the native vegetation. Now, because Japanese stiltgrass comes up later in the summer, it doesn't necessarily compete with spring wildflowers. But it definitely competes with what's going on right now, and then it forms a mat of dried hay, I'll call it, later on in the season that just makes it difficult for native plants to grow through. So we control Japanese stiltgrass several ways. As we were walking out here, we were walking along our driveway, and we were just weeding it, because that's obviously the best way of doing it. It pulls very easily. It's shallow rooted. It's an annual, doesn't have much of a root system. So you pull it when you see it. That gets rid of it. You don't have to worry about having a little bit of root left that it's going to resprout. It doesn't seem to do that very much. You weed it and it's gone. We've also tried other mechanical means. Along our driveway, a couple years ago, we went through and cut it down low to the ground. When we cut it down low to the ground early on in the season, it still produced flowers and seeds, so that didn't help very much. It seems like the best way, if you're going to try mowing, is doing it just before it flowers. We did do that along the driveway, and we actually, if we left a few leaves, it caused a problem, but if we scalped it all the way down to the ground later on in the season, it seemed to take care of it. We did clear large areas on our driveway that are much, much better now. Obviously, we had to pick some as we were walking down the driveway, but it used to be there were carpets along the driveway. Japanese stiltgrass produces flowers two different ways. First, it produces flowers that are open pollinated. The flowers open and are pollinated and produce seeds, and those seeds drop off. It will also, later on in the season, produce closed flowers. Closed flowers that never open up to be pollinated, so it's only self-pollinated, and it stays in a little closed capsule there. So when the seeds are produced, they tend to stay with the dried up grass. Now that's a problem if you're just mowing, because you may not see flowers, but there may be flowers that are small that are still producing seeds, and you mow it down, it drops to the ground, the seeds develop, and you still have that seed bank there. So I would say that if you're going to try mowing, it's better to mow before the flowers start to show. So if we're treating an area like this, we really can't use a mechanical method. We could come in here and weed this, but to be honest, on 60 acres of land, there's enough patches like this that it would take a long time. We wouldn't get to it all, and some stuff would go to seed. It's better for us to get in there and kill this. We'll use an herbicide. We use a Claim Extra. A Claim Extra is a grass-specific herbicide. It doesn't kill all grasses. I think you can use it on turf grasses, actually. But you can spray this, and you can spray it on the spice bush or the other things that are growing here, and it doesn't impact those things. It just kills the Japanese stiltgrass. It will kill some native grasses. I feel like we had some deer tongue that it looked like it got on it, and it also killed that also. But it's so much better than just using a non-selective herbicide like glyphosate in here. People use glyphosate. If you use glyphosate at a really low concentration, like 0.5%, it's been reported, I don't have experience with it, but it's been reported that it will kill Japanese stiltgrass but leave perennials, so the shrubs and things like that will be okay. I don't have much experience with that. The advantage is right now you don't have any of the spring wildflowers up, so using glyphosate is not going to kill spring wildflowers. It's only going to kill things that are up in the summer. That could be a good option for you. So we will spray this area with a Claim Extra. We mix it up just according to the bottle directions. We mix a surfactant in it so that it sticks to the leaves better, and then we and we mix a dye in it so we can see what we're doing. When we treat an area like this, you can see most of it is right in the middle here. So we'll treat that area and work our way towards the outside, hitting the little satellite areas, and then pretty quickly you run out of it. You don't see it anymore. Then we mark it with a flag. We date the flag so that we know what we've treated and when we've treated it, so we can keep an eye on how it's working. There's been some question as to how we mix up our chemicals and how we apply them, so I wanted to talk through that a little bit. We use a sprayer. For a Claim Extra, I use a 2-gallon sprayer just because of how much we go through when we're out spraying. Often we use a smaller sprayer. This gets kind of heavy, but we do mix things up in a 2-gallon sprayer. Again, we talk about a Claim Extra. So this we bought in a pint-sized jar. We buy it online. I think it was about $90 or so. You use 18 milliliters for a 2-gallon container, so you're not using a lot of it, so this goes a long way. It needs a surfactant, so this is a non-ionic surfactant. I believe we bought it at either Rural King or Tractor Supply. We use a dye. Right now we're using this blue dye. We use about 1 ounce per gallon, so 2 ounces in this 2-gallon container. We will also use about 1 ounce of the surfactant. So while I'm measuring it up right now, the first thing I do is, if I'm mixing up 2 gallons, I fill it up with water to just short of the 2-gallon mark. A lot of times when you're adding water to chemicals, if you put the chemicals in the bottom and then add water, it foams up and it gets hard to mix it up. So you fill it up most of the way, but we're looking for a final volume of 2 gallons. Obviously you could scale this down to whatever you wanted, or scale it up, whatever you need to do. So the Claim Extra tends to settle, it seems, so I'm going to shake it up. Now I used to use a syringe. I got a syringe from our vet where I could measure 18 milliliters very easily. I'm choosing not to do that right now because then the syringe gets dirty and it's hard to clean the syringe out. So I've got a measuring cup here with milliliters on the side. So I poured 18 milliliters. And it's not rocket science. It can be off by a little bit. Dump that in there. Then I'm going to put a similar amount. Again, it's not anything that's real critical for this surfactant, but about that much surfactant in there. And then the dye, I put in about 1 ounce per gallon, so we're going to put in 2 ounces, which will be about 60 milliliters. And then I take my spray can and I clean out the measuring cup into the spray bottle. So I get that all rinsed out. I set that aside, and then I can add water up to the 2-gallon line. I feel like a Claim Extra does not readily mix. It seems to separate out a little bit. So I try to give it some extra shaking when I'm done. Okay, I'll show you briefly what I do when I'm spraying. So I've got a 2-gallon sprayer all loaded up. I've got it set on a mist pattern right now, although when I'm working towards the middle, I'll kick it back a little bit so it's more of a stream, so it'll shoot a little farther. I find that if I walk over the area, it'll crush down the Stiltgrass, and then it's harder to spray. So I want to keep it kind of fluffed up a little bit. I'm going to work kind of on the outside, spraying into the center, and work my way around, and then come out and then start working my way around it and try to get some of these loose ones that are these little satellite plants that are floating around on the outside. So because a Claim Extra is grass specific, I'm not too worried about it getting it on the forbs, the broadleaf plants here. But I do need to get underneath them, because if I just spray down on top, it's going to form an umbrella for a lot of the Stiltgrass. So I find that a lot of times I'm spraying underneath things kind of horizontally and letting it drop down into place. So you get the idea here. If I come across an area that has a lot of grasses, that I wonder whether this is going to kill the grasses also, and it's just a few plants, I may then reach in and weed out some of the Stiltgrass out of the grass so I don't have to spray over the grasses. When it's just forbs, I'll go ahead and hit it. So the next step is that I will mark this with a blue pin flag and date it so that we know when we come back that you know how it's been working, and we know that this is an area that will potentially have a seed production for next year and for the next couple of years. It also lets me know if we have an unexpected rainstorm this afternoon, I can come back and check the areas that I sprayed before rain to make sure that it actually worked. So that's our procedure. I mentioned in the last video that we were going to try a different herbicide called Milestone. Stiltgrass is listed on the label for Milestone as something that it's controlled, and they speak a good sales pitch for Milestone because it's supposed to be so great. I chose not to go and pursue that because Milestone is persistent in the soil, so you can treat an area and then it will have some residual effect, which is good if you're trying to keep it from germinating. So as a pre-emergent herbicide, something like Milestone will potentially keep Japanese stiltgrass from germinating. To be honest, in an area like this out in the woods, I'm really leery of putting something in the soil that's going to be around long enough, like until next spring, that it's going to have an effect on what germinates. So I've just shelved that idea and I'm not pursuing it. I really like the Acclaim Extra. We've sprayed areas and then things come up right through it. It doesn't seem like it affects other than what we've treated. Same thing with a low dilution of glyphosate. You know, it's going to kill anything that it hits the leaves of, or you know, at least the small tender things. But once it's gone, it's gone. It's not going to be traveling through the soil and drifting down to other non-target plants and things like that. So I feel more comfortable with those options than I do with something like Milestone. So wanted to clarify that from my last video. Next, we want to go look at some areas that I've treated already. We're going to look at them, see how they've responded and when the date was that we sprayed them, so you get an idea how quickly the Acclaim Extra works and you know what type of results you should be looking for. Here we have a blue pin flag, meaning that we treated stiltgrass on July 9th. So today's the 19th. Hey there, you're going to have to move a little bit because you make a better door than a window. If people want to see this, scoot over there for us. Thank you. So treated on July 9th, it's the 19th, so it's been 10 days. And you can see what it looks like if you could zoom in here. It is pretty withered. So there are things around here that are still looking fine, whether it's the honeysuckle or the white snakeroot or the box elder. There's other things here that have not been killed by this. So you can see it's been pretty selective. The moss that's growing underneath it, obviously this was sprayed because this is all dying, but the moss underneath it still looks healthy. That's what I like to see, particularly with when treating something like stiltgrass here. I look at the area. I don't see any other stiltgrass looking healthy right now. It could easily be that I missed something, particularly when you're spraying something like this, and maybe underneath the snake root here, there's some that gets blocked by the leaves. So 10 days, not completely dead, but you can obviously tell it's been treated. We're probably pretty good here. It looks like I've gotten everything. There's always a chance that the seed bank is going to sprout up again next year. So we've got these flags in here, so we can look for this next year. We can look for the areas that we have treated, because those are the areas that are most likely going to have a seed bank that we need to treat next year. Japanese stiltgrass produces seeds that may remain viable in the soil for, they say, less than 7 years. What does that mean? I don't know. But it could easily have seeds that were viable, that did not sprout this year, that may sprout next year. So next year, we'll look for these flags, check to see whether there's anything around there. Often there's like 1 or 2 plants. We just hit those plants, maybe just pick those plants, and then we move on to the next area. So this is an area that we treated and we flagged last year. So right about the same time that we did the video. And this was a big patch, kind of like what we just were looking at over there, where it was very evident. And I look, and there's hardly any, but I can still see some. So you see any, and it's going to produce seeds, and they produce seeds, you know, thousands of seeds per square meter. So we need to get that area. So as I'm looking at this area, okay, here's a couple of plants, and you can see how easy it is to weed. It just pulls up very easily. Here's another one. Okay. Show the roots. Now that area is clear. So there's the roots. Here's some in the path down here. Okay. So did I miss them before, or did they did I miss something that produced seeds last year, or is this seeds that were in the seed bank? I don't know. But I can take maybe a minute or two, and I can take an area that was a lot of Japanese stiltgrass, and I can get it down to nothing again. And hopefully next year there will not be anything. But there may be. We'll leave the flags here, so we'll check again next year, and we'll see if there's another small handful. But it should be less and less every year until we have no Japanese stiltgrass, which would be wonderful. Okay. I think we've got the area cleared. So we are actually off of our property up creek with the idea that we've talked with our neighbors. They're not interested in investing the time and the money into controlling stiltgrass, but they're okay if we do it. So that's what we've talked about and what we're doing. So this is an area, if we clear it out of our property and we have stiltgrass producing seeds and lesser celandine and honeysuckle and other things producing seeds upstream from us, it's just going to wash into our woodland. So we have kind of expanded our range a little bit. So that's why over here we have a yellow flag, which means that I treated lesser celandine this spring to try to get rid of it. Okay, so if you look over here, there is just a carpet of Japanese stiltgrass. I did not get to over here because I had to draw the line someplace. But on our side of the creek, if you come over here, this area was the same, all the way up to the top of the slope and down into here. So we sprayed a lot of Acclaim Extra through here. And it's significantly different. I mean, I look through here, and if I'm looking for Japanese stiltgrass, I see a lot of other things growing here, but I do not see any Japanese stiltgrass, just looking at this area. I'm sure I missed some things, but I have a before and after picture. I have a picture of this little path here before we sprayed. We'll put that in there so you can kind of see what it looks like. I feel pretty good about this. This is good. Now, this is an interesting thing. If we go over here, just follow me over here, because you see a lot of things that look like Japanese stiltgrass from a distance. And that's the smartweed. So if you're looking for the thing that looks the most like Japanese stiltgrass, this is oriental smartweed. And it has a shorter leaf that tapers to a point on both sides. This has kind of a yellow line down the middle of it. But it doesn't have the parallel venation of Japanese stiltgrass. This is definitely a smartweed, and you can tell it's a smartweed by looking at the ochrea. It has this membranous sheath around the stem, and this is, you can see the long bristles on it, which tell you what species this is. This is actually a non-native invasive species, so in a sense, we managed to kill all of the Japanese stiltgrass here and left all of the invasive smartweed, which is kind of unfortunate. While I was doing this, I thought, well, gee, this would probably be a good place to use Roundup, and we would knock off the whole thing. We would get rid of the smartweed and the stiltgrass, and unfortunately a whole bunch of native things, but we have a seed bank of native things all around us that would feed back into this area. Maybe that was the solution to take. I didn't do that. I chose to use the Acclaim Extra, and we selectively removed the stiltgrass from here and left everything else. Okay, as I show you these two leaves that I was talking about, there's the Japanese stiltgrass here with the shiny stripe down the middle, pointed at both sides, and right next to it is the smartweed that's pointed on both sides and has the yellow line down the middle of it. The easiest way, I think, to tell the difference is that ochrea, that sheath around the base of the stem that the Japanese stiltgrass does not have, but all smartweeds do have.
And that has a pinkish stem.
This does have a pinkish stem, you're right. Thanks for joining us as we share our journey with how we're getting rid of stiltgrass. I'll be honest, I feel cautiously optimistic. You know, we walk through these areas and I see how much less Japanese stiltgrass there was than last year and the year before, I feel good about it. I really feel like we've got some tools in place that are helping us get a hold of it. I know there's some areas out there that the Japanese stiltgrass looks monumental, but I think taking it one step at a time, we can push this back. So I appreciate you watching. If you like the video and it's useful to you, hit the like button. We always appreciate new subscribers. If you know of other people that this would be useful for, please share the video. Anyway, thanks for coming along.